to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast. And I'm excited to have my next guest, Rachel. Welcome and happy Friday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure. I'm going to introduce you to our audience so they can know who you are and what you're all about, and looking really forward into delving into your story of how you started and where you are right now. So, Rachel, and I will pronounce your surname, Daydou.
They do. Yeah, that's pretty
Daydou?
much it.
Rachel
Yeah.
Daydou considers herself a serial entrepreneur. She is also a lecturer who has lectured at university in Shanghai. And currently, she is a partner of a business called Favor Nouvelle, which is responsible for the China business, including business growth of tech, consulting, and marketing division, leading an amazing team of 70 plus talents and working with brands, global and local. And you're currently based in Paris, am I right?
So exactly, yeah. I'm now after this experience, I moved to Paris, and I'm now supporting brands from Europe to connect and to accelerate their business in China and to reconnect with Chinese travelers in collaboration with our China team.
That's exciting. So, Rachel,
Yeah.
let's go all the way back. Like to really sort of understand your story of what you studied. I know you speak many languages and sort of what your early years were as a young woman growing up.
Great. Yeah, so my mother was Tunisian and my father is French. And so kind of growing up in Chinatown in Paris, which was obviously a very, very mixed place, very multicultural place. And that's where I made many of my friends that are, from many different origins. And growing up, I moved around, but always in Paris. That's Paris is my hometown, and moved around. And I had the chance to go to China for the first time in 2007, 2008. Where I studied Chinese, and I also worked at an events agency. And then I came back to finish my studies in France. And then I moved back with, pretty much just my backpack in 2011, my diploma in my backpack, and started my working life in China. So I would say that, across I was a really geeky child, very, very nerdy around books. Books were really the place where I felt most at ease. I think maybe a little bit lonely as a child, a bit geeky and lonely. And my mother was a film editor. So cinema took a very, very big part of my life, and there was a lot of, magic associated with it. And my father is a psychoanalyst. So, I would say, a family where, there's a lot of space to be who you are and to explore and to be different, I think. So that was quite upbringing. And then, during my teenage years, I think that's really when I discovered. So the beginning was really about discovering how to become excellent at something. And I really pushed to be excellent at school and also to be excellent in sports. That's where I started practicing Kung Fu. And during my early years, I became a French champion multiple times, 8 times, as a matter of fact. I had a wonderful teacher, master. And so really those first years were about, learning how to, manage yourself and become excellent. And during the teenage years, I think those were really the very social years where, learning to, create connections and be someone that, can relate to others. And then after that, I think it was really about, during my 20s, it was really about discovering the impact that you can have on a business, on developing an activity that's, beyond yourself. And that brought me to some of the years that I'm living right now, which for me are much more about better aligning my capacity for impact and my convictions and the purpose for which I feel strongest about. So that's a bit so far. It's a bit the journey.
I mean, an amazing journey, and you have a strong, obviously, culture heritage, but the fact that you made the decision or decided that going to China was something interesting for you. You land in a foreign country where the language is completely different. You can't even relate it to French at all, there is no
Yeah.
connection to be made. So
No.
while you're there, obviously you studied there and then you also went on to become a lecturer there. At what point did you fall in love with a foreign country and say, I think I can make this my home and make something out
Mm.
of it?
That's such a good question. I think there are a lot of things that brought me to China. There was the opportunity of going there with with a family. There was the excitement, and there was all the preconceptions that I had about the country. And there are things that kept me there, which were really the never-ending opportunities, the growth, the consumption upgrade, the constant discovery and excitement that this country has lived through the past 15 years, but I think even beyond that, even not just the 13 years that I spent, but it was already the case, I think, before. And it's such a huge and important part of the world history. It's a very prominent country. It has such lovely also, cultural habits, and it's very foreign in the sense that as soon as you start to actually learn the language, you effectively start rewiring your brain,
Mm.
because the way that the language works is a reflection of the way that reality is conceived in that language. And so if you go through all the hurdles of learning how to speak, understand, read, and write Chinese, then you're effectively rewiring your brain. And that is an experience that's absolutely fascinating, I think. And so I loved, even though it's so hard, and it's so easy to forget. And I have still, up until today, I have HSK5, but I still have a very big difference in my speaking and oral language compared to my reading and writing abilities. There's still a big gap, actually. It's a fascinating journey that I would encourage anyone to go through, just for feeling like you have the ability to really think absolutely differently in another language. So that's something that's pretty cool and very rewarding.
Yeah, you touched on a really important point, that the fact when you start to learn a language, so I'm fluent in German. I learned French in high school.
Ooh.
And you're so right. When you're learning a language, you are forced to dissect not just the language, the culture, the
Mm,
history behind it, the history behind certain words and meaning, and immerse
mm.
yourself in a completely different way. And Mandarin is on a completely different level as well. Talk to me about your career journey. So you studied obviously in China. Was lecturing your first job, or talk
Mm.
to me about how that came about?
Yeah, no, actually, no, so many things happened before that. My
Hmm.
first job was working for the importer and distributor of AB InBev. And
Hmm.
so I was actually effectively going around the country and discussing with distributors around the country to actually sell beer. And that was obviously a lot of fun.
Of
If you are
course.
20 something and you have, the chance to handle all the key accounts in Beijing, Shanghai, and go to bars all day, all night long, and also to handle the expansion of premium products. That was very exciting. So first job, I really really loved it, and then I moved to Shanghai, and I got into Beaumanoir, which was a fashion company, and I was in charge of developing a new generation of stores. And so I was going again all around the country to kind of help develop those new generations of stores and understand how they can function best and how headquarters can support those new generations of stores. So it was really exciting going around, the country, so traveling a lot. And then after that, actually, in parallel, I had already started with my first startup, which ended up being called Li Haoma, which was a pun on word on Ni Haoma, which means hello, how are you? And Li Haoma means how is your gift? Li Wu de Li. And this changed. This project took so many forms and changed a lot. But basically, how it ended up looking like is a mobile app where you can play mini games and get rewards from brands. So it was kind of gamifying advertising and making it fun. You could play riddle games, you could play geolocalized games like Pokemon Go type of games in order to get and fetch gifts that could be, free discounts, could be free products, free experiences from brands. That was a really novel way to explore new brands and products. And so that was a fantastic journey. We raised venture capital money. We went through one of the largest accelerator in China called China Accelerator. Those guys are still such close friends. And I was also awarded Forbes 30 Under 30 for that work. So it was just like a lot of really exciting things happening. For the first 1.5 years, I was doing double job with Beaumanoir, and then for the next 2 years, I was focused on the startup. But at the same time, even though we were raising money, etc., we were reinvesting everything in user acquisition and tech development. So that's the moment where I started also working at university. As a teacher, as a lecturer for innovation, entrepreneurship, leadership, and I worked for several universities, and I also handled the whole master degree program, which was really fun because it was around entrepreneurship, and there was this really magic, triangle moment in my life where I was learning, I was practicing being a founder of a company, learning from the accelerator, and teaching and organizing for others to discover what it is through the university program. So it was really like looking at the same object with so many different dimensions. So it was very exciting.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, I went on to another journey where I decided to have a project that was around education for entrepreneurs and helping entrepreneurs make their company profitable, which is something that we hadn't managed to do with the previous business. And with that, so I created that learning program, and we were cash flow positive. We were generating revenue, and I handled that for a couple of months. But then I really, even though we were generating revenue, it was very small, and I was totally running out of money and the savings. And so I'm like, okay, I need to find a job now. And this is the moment where Faber Novel approached me. Mm, they had just been acquired, and they were setting up a whole new range of services. And so with those services, my competencies could be useful. And so I started as head of consulting, innovation consulting, and then we grew up the business, and then I became general manager, and then we acquired a tech company, and then I took over as managing director for the overall business. So that was my 5 years at Faber Novel in China. And just this year, I moved to France to follow two main reasons. I think you can't, get bored of China, but you can get tired. And I think it had been, several years, also very trying years with COVID, etc. And I had, committed, to stay for the overall time of my tenure. And I had promised myself this is the last job in China, otherwise you will never leave. So I was like, okay, you need to make a decision. And so, okay, that was my decision. And so I came back to France, and actually last year Faber Novel got acquired by Ernst& Young.
Mhm.
And so I came back within, EY France, EY Faber Novel teams now in Paris, still working on China topics, but also more and more on sustainability topics, which is really, really close to my heart. So that's where I hope my future will bring me.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a lot to unpack there. So you've gone like full circle, 360 degrees, started in France, and I've gone a whirlwind accelerator journey and landed back in France as well. I've got
Yeah,
a few questions.
of
So
course.
obviously, having been to China as well, China is very fast paced. And it really speaks as a testament through you talking about your journey that all these things have happened because it's a country where when opportunity strikes, it's either you take
Yeah.
it or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the first part of your journey was nurturing relationships, expanding a beer in different tiers, etc., which is also very quick because of the size of the country. Businesses grow so swiftly.
Yeah.
But how? So you talk to me a bit in depth about the serial entrepreneur because that's really interesting. So
Mm.
you met a few people and just decided to start a gamification business. But talk to me through that conversation because is
Yeah.
that something that happens in a bar, in a pub, or you know, you're thinking, oh, there's an opportunity here. I love playing games. How did that even come about?
Yeah, so I think, serial entrepreneur only set up two businesses. So I think from two you can say it's a series, but just to be humble about it, it's just two.
But still,
Um,
though, yeah.
and I think the first one really, I connected with the found with this guy who was about to found that company, and he was organizing really cool and edgy parties in Beijing that were really impressive to me. I was
Mhm,
very impressed, and I thought that he had something very special. He had like a very um, a very strong and charismatic personality, and he also had like ideas that were making really a difference on the
mhm,
market. And so when we started talking on that level, and then he introduced me his idea for the business, I was really looking for something exciting to do. I had more and more friends around me that were entrepreneurs. I aspired to be one. And so, this person plus my aspiration, it kind of came together, and it it worked out on he was happy to have someone like me on board, and so that's how it started. The conversation in itself, I don't think I can remember it very clearly, but yes, indeed, it was very casual. The first one was very casual, was really about him sharing his vision and and showing me the work that he had done and the team that he was putting together. So I think it was very casual. And then, of course, we went into a little bit more details and discussions and contracts and stuff. But that's accessory. I think it was a meeting with someone that really kind of created that. And I think that all of them, all businesses, all startups are like that. If you look at the way that Y Combinator chooses their startups, they actually do founders interviews, and they ask them super personal questions about how long they've known each other, and what's the biggest flaw of the other person, and what's the hardest situation they've been at. So it's really particularly about entrepreneurship. It's so important the people that you go into business with. Um, so yeah, I think that was the first. And the second business, that's I was the main driver behind that, and I had learned a lot of things from my previous business, and I decided to do everything totally differently, to be super lean, to choose people that I knew very well and that I had worked with before, that had complementary competencies than mine, to be very focused, to be very to use a business model that was proven, and so that's why the second company that was set up was so different. Yeah.
yeah. And Rachel, thank you so much for sharing that and being vulnerable because I think we need to demystify or take away the myths around what entrepreneurship
Mm,
is. And like you said, it was a coming together of people with ideas and a common ground and a drive to say, I think we can make this work. And interestingly enough, you said, the first business had a lot of investment but wasn't profitable. Great
mm,
ideas. And then on the second attempt, you said, right, I think this is what I can do and make it better as well.
mm,
Yeah. And I also noticed that a lot of universities now are offering courses or modules that focus on entrepreneurship, which,
mm.
before it was all about the theory, but the fact now
Yeah.
there's practical, the ability potentially to meet startups or to talk to people who've, started their own businesses. It becomes more real world and real life than just talking about someone who founded a business 80 years ago, and it's not
Totally,
it's not
totally.
relatable, you know?
Totally. I think the what we try, it's pretty much impossible to teach entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship has a lot to do with character, actually,
Mm.
and determination and resourcefulness, and it has a lot to do with character, has a lot to do with market condition, and what's what's possible to emerge within a certain market. Um, and there's an element of luck and timing, and all of these are also coming together. That being said, the way that we set up the entrepreneurship program was the main objective was, let's try to put the students in a situation that looks most like what it's going to be like if they were entrepreneur. And so we didn't have classes, we had workshops, we didn't have teachers. It was only entrepreneurs actually sharing in a very structured way, but it was only entrepreneurs, coming on stage. We were hosting not a university, but in an incubator. And there were no exams, they were pitch. And they were pitching at 3 different times in their semester. They were pitching to real entrepreneurs and investors. And part of the grade was about how much money they've made. So we actually were encouraging them to push as much all the way till your product is useful enough that people are ready to pay for it. And that's kind of the ultimate market test, right? So that was, it was, first of all, it was really fun to imagine that. And it was really, yeah, it was really exciting to see that the way that we had the best way we had to understand whether the program was successful or not is asking the same question before and after the program. That question is, do you want to be an entrepreneur? And before the program, people were like, yeah, majority of them were like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it could be cool. And at the end of the program, 95% of them were like, hell no. And 5% of them were like, this is me. I am it. We're doing this. And
I mean, amazing. I love that. I'm venturing now into the space of
cool.
advisory and non-executive work, and I find I've attended a few pitch sessions, and it's so interesting to see how different people are structuring their pitches depending on what stage of the startup they're in. And it's amazing. I feel like you learn so much, and the questions that investors are asking, the kind of advice that they're looking for. It's an exciting time. We know business enterprise is good for all economies,
Hmm.
and it's important for the longevity of countries, etc. But it's really interesting to see, and great to see that you have such a. I think you're part of something where even years after, you've given them skill sets that they will use in whatever their journey is.
Probably, I hope so. And at least, because it's the last year of their study, I also saw it as a way to help them determine themselves. You
Mm.
know, if you're not cut for entrepreneurship, that's totally fine. It's better that you know that maybe this is not the time for you, or it's not for you at all, because it's a pretty rough journey. So uh so it's good to have first hand experience in a kind of secured environment, and that's what we try to set up for them. So that was really fun.
Exciting. And in your current role now, so talk to me about if you were just to talk about the last few years, etc. Obviously, you've talked about the challenges of what you've experienced. What would you say have been some highlights or successes that you're proud of as a woman in such a prestigious role? I would say there are not very many women at the top, so we're happy for everyone that breaks through that glass ceiling.
Yes. Um, so I think my personal journey on that topic has been that I grew up with 3 brothers and practicing martial arts, and my kind of the first stage of relation to being a female in the world was there is no difference between men and female. That was my first, kind of stand. And I'm as strong and as smart and as loud and as whatever else as a guy, and there is zero difference. And then I really evolved from that. As some people might think, of course, there's so many differences, right? I think I evolved from that because I think at the first stage, I was really feeling if I accept that there are differences, then there's going to be hierarchy.
Yeah.
And so that was my first kind of rejection of hierarchy, with the way to compete at the same level, pretty much. So, compete at the same level. And I think that across the years, as I was maturing, I really tried to, I realized that there were major differences, that there was a way that those differences could be assets, cards that could be played, that by increasing your flexibility across the board of behaviors and feelings that you could, feel and display, then that was a very, very useful and big asset for yourself, and also for potentially finding a place in the environment that you choose to operate in. And so that has been, it was kind of a game changer, first to accept many things for myself, and also to consider that the real strength is to have the ability to have the full scope, the full range of emotions, the full range of behaviors. That's the biggest strength that you can develop, and depending on the situation, that you'd go in, pick and choose and kind of display, the behavior that serves you best at that specific moment. And in that case, if I feel like if I and people manage to do that, they are much stronger, and they're in a much better position for I don't want to say succeeding, because success is very, it doesn't, success is how you feel when you do well what you think is important. Success is not having a big salary and having a big title and being deeply unhappy and burnt out, and that's the contrary of success. So I think there's been so many evolutions for me, and part of the catalyst that allowed my evolution on this topic was IPWS, International Professional Women's Society. It's a non-for-profit that's been operating in Shanghai for 28 years. And I was part of it as a member, and then as, various positions on the board until president. And that was just a space where you could explore those topics. And I think that the conversation's been much more open in recent years to kind of explore those topics and reinvent a bit, definition of success, and reinvent a bit, our possibilities as humans of different shapes and forms in society.
That is so interesting. I mean, what you've just highlighted is even just about reading the room, isn't it? Whatever situation you're in a business, understanding, reading the room, the nonverbal cues that are going on, approaching each meeting, each relationship in a different way to get the result that you want, and embracing the fact that, I'm a woman, I'm okay with it. I'm brilliant, I'm amazing, but also accepting that you will encounter some challenges, and it's just about how you deal with that. So you've talked about the non-profit organization that you were affiliated with.
Mm-hmm.
How important is your circle? Let's, segueing into that, your circle, how important is that for you?
Oh, that's so my biggest, I think, what I always tell people is, and I truly believe, you are the average of the 5 people closest to you. So it works both ways, meaning if one day you turn around and you're like, whether those people suck, then maybe you've lost yourself. And that has happened to me. At some point in my life, you're in transition between geographies, between things, and you just find yourself, looking around and say, nobody that's close to me cares for me, or nobody, really has, is bringing me anything positive, that's, that tells something about where you are at a personal level on that at that time. It doesn't define you, but it tells you about where you are from a personal level at that time. And the other way, the contrary is also true. Um, I think when I started, and I use very specific example, when I started, working on Li Hao Ma in my spare time, when I had my full-time job, but I was working on the side in the evening and things, I was I couldn't feel like I was an entrepreneur because nobody from my family was one, and I didn't have the reflexes, I didn't have the vocabulary, etc. And so I thought I need to surround myself with entrepreneurs so that I can soak that in and really learn from them. And so that's when I started hanging out and being a member of Startup Grind, which is another non-for-profit that I was part of and part of the board for a long time after that. And that's really by creating those 5 people closest to me and surrounding myself with entrepreneurs at that time, where it was so critical for me to become that and to have the reflexes and have the network and have the knowledge and have the get into the movement of what that means to be an entrepreneur. And that helped me a lot. At the time that I decided to switch to really go full-time on my startup, I already had the support system of people that were doing that every day and for whom it was totally normal and challenging, of course, but it was normal for them. So through those, whatever, I think it was about 6 months of transition and, recreating that inner circle of people that were doing what I really wanted to do, that allowed me to project myself as one. And just recently, on the 1st of July, I had a wedding celebration, and I had 130 people around me. And when I was looking around, I was so amazed. And because all of these people I admire so much for the different things that they have done in their lives, and I felt so grateful to have those people around. So I think, how to say, they will never do things in your place, but they will give you strength, they will inspire you, they will support you, they will challenge you, they will mock you sometimes, maybe, but they're supporting for you to shape yourself. And
Mhm.
so, even, I mean, if people close to you are toxic, even if they're for your family members, sometimes it's better to keep them a little bit at bay so that you can keep your vital energy for positive things and for continuing on growing for yourself.
Yeah, I mean that's really such a very big takeaway there, that look at the 5 people or 4 people around you, and that will tell you where you are in your life. And you want
Mm,
people who are not just praising you, like you said, you want them
mm,
to
mm, mm,
also hold you accountable, hold you to
mm, mm,
account,
totally,
to
totally.
challenge you, to say, well, I don't think what you're doing is right, and this is why. Or to mock you as well and say, oh man, that was, really crazy what you
Embarrassing.
did. Or to push you as well and say, look, we got this, we can push through. it's
Mm, mm,
it's
mm.
really important. And if you're unable to reflect, or if you don't have a circle, then get one.
Yeah.
It's That's a really important guiding compass. Talk to me about self-care, Rachel. I know martial arts, I mean, damn girl. That's very badass. But talk to me about how you look after you. What drives you outside of your professional career?
Yeah, and so that's something very new to me. It wasn't something that I was even conscious about or taking care of. I mean, so that's something that's new and that I had to do in order to continue actually operating. Um, and I worked actually with a health coach, a holistic health coach, for a while. Her name is Elizabeth Schifflin, and she's wonderful. She's a healer. She really is a witch in the best possible meaning. And so at that time, that I felt like I really needed some support, to because I felt like my body was failing me. And I was realizing that continuing to push wasn't
It's not
making
healthy.
things any
Yeah.
better. And so she really helped me on, and it started by taking the shape of insomnia. So that was really, the big, difficulty that I'm still, today, more or less, depends on the periods, but still struggling with today. And that fucks you up completely
Mm.
because you're not thinking clearly, you are tired, you're irritable, you're not patient. And for me, because I have a lot of energy, if I'm rested, I have a lot of good, positive, optimistic energy. If I'm not well rested, I have a lot of negative, angry, impatient energy. It's the same level, it's just not the same nature. And that's really
Mm.
bad for me and for everyone around. So, the way that she really helped me to turn this around is she said, even if you think your work is the most important thing, you have to realize you can't do it properly if you don't solve and take care of your body and your mind. And so she really helped me on, sleep rituals, on food, nutrition, on exercise like yoga, on meditation, and all of these. And that was really such a space. Like she helped me to find a space in my life and in my head that didn't existed before. So um, as of today, I think it's very cliche, but never mind. I still do yoga and meditation. But most importantly, like all the work that I had done on mindfulness, I think just the biggest learning is because I'm very active and very reactive. The biggest learning is if something challenging is coming your way, just pause for a minute because between whatever is coming to you and your reaction there is a space, and that space is your choice. Is what do you want to make out of this? It's challenging, it's frustrating, it's coming at you. Are you going to blow up and make things worse potentially? Are you going to accept it? Are you going to be calm? Are you going to be smiling? Or are and that's that moment is a space for choice. And that was the moment that you experience it for the first time. You're like, wow, I'm not a victim of my own character in a certain way, and that's very liberating.
And that's also a very valuable lesson as well. I was reading the stats. So, for example, here in the UK, 1 in 7 people in the UK survive on less than 5 hours of sleep, and
Ah,
then 71% of UK adults sleep less than 7 hours, a day.
my
And
god,
sleep
that's very
deprivation,
short.
it is a thing because
Yeah.
we are conditioned to be overachievers and work at 100 miles an hour. And you've touched on a very valuable point about the only thing we are all in control of is how we react to a situation. That's a choice,
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. Yeah.
It's a choice that we
Mm,
have.
mm,
And learning that for me has taken lots of time as well, because I was always not leaving that space to be able to say, right, how do I want to react? I'm only in control of that, and that will help me deal with whatever is coming my way. It's liberating. Do you think that's come more now as you are obviously a managing director and responsible for a large team? That means responsible means delegating, trusting that they know what they're doing because you can't
mm.
do their jobs for them. Has that come from that as well?
The being in, I don't like to say in control because it shouldn't be like that, but at least having a say in the way that you react is critical when managing people and things,
Yeah.
because I used to just directly dump my stress onto my team, and let's just say it's not very productive. If you
Yes.
just look at productivity, it's not very productive. Doesn't make you very likable, and it also doesn't it just doesn't make you credible. Actually, people don't
Mhm.
want a very stressed leader. It doesn't bring confidence. So that was something that I had to exercise a lot in that context. um, I don't know if that answers your question
No,
specifically.
it
Yeah.
does, because with leadership obviously comes great responsibility, but a good leader also knows themselves, also knows when they can see themselves in their team and recognize, okay, that's a strength, that's a weakness. Active listening is a very big part. It's not just spewing out the first thing you hear. You have to listen, you have to absorb and read the room. So you've touched on so many things, which I feel like, Rachel, over the years, you've just had like a metamorphosis into a leader. You didn't know it was happening, but it's happened over time through all the experiences that you've gone through as well. And it just shows that it's a process. Everything is a journey. We don't know it. 15 or 20 years ago, if somebody told us, yeah, you're going to have to delegate and manage your sleep, and then you'd
Mm.
be like, yeah, what? No, fuck no. I want to do everything now. And yet here we are trying to be all zen, as it is. So you've talked about your career journey, which is amazing, embracing opportunity, embracing cultures, surrounding yourself with a great circle of people. Talk to me about mentoring, because you've said you've been part
Mm.
of nonprofits, you've been part of organizations where you're motivating
Yeah.
startups or entrepreneurs. How important do you think is for someone to seek a mentor in their life?
It's critical.
Yeah.
Critical. You can have very informal mentors.
Yes.
I consider that my brothers are, at times they are acting as mentors.
Hmm.
Maybe they were my first mentors. Yeah. Um, I work with a coach now, professional coach, and I also have a mentor. And across my life, I've mentored many people, and I'm now mentor for startups within Orbit Accelerator, um, so which is under SOS Venture, and so it's I think there's the experience as a mentee and the experience as a mentor. Um, they are, feeding each other. I always want to be progressing.
Hmm.
I don't mean I want to climb the career ladder. That's not what I mean. What I mean is I want to be progressing myself personally, professionally, in the sense that of best utilizing my strength for something that has meaning in a way that's sustainable for me. And mentor, yeah, having a mentor is just having that kind of that person that has experienced some of the things that you've experienced, and that can give you not advice. Typically they don't give too much advice, but at least a sounding board
Hmm.
for whatever it is that your experience is or that you are trying to do, and give you hints or inspiration or reference points, or challenging you or asking questions to deepen. It's very different to having a coach. I think the coach is really, first of all, coach is paid engagement, so you kind of have a roadmap that you want to go through, and it's more structured, and it's about you finding the answers. I think with a mentor, it's more about finding someone that you admire and that you wish you were, or on some level would become like one day, and having their personal experience feedback to feed you in order to grow into a similar direction. So I think those are very complementary. For me, they're complementary, and being a mentor is also complementary because whatever you receive. I mean, I've received so much. I want others that I admire to be able to receive too. So being an advisor, being a mentor is just that it is, you use the expression giving back, but when you say giving back, it looks like you will be missing something, like you are taking from yourself and you giving it to someone else, meaning you don't have it anymore. That's not true. You still have it. You just, it's more like making it flourish in someone else. So you're not going to be giving away anything or lacking of anything if you do that. It's quite,
Yeah,
yeah.
when you give without it's never um the value exchange is not the same. So
Mm,
if I give something to you today, what I will get back will not be in the same way. It'll be in a different way somewhere else.
mm.
This is how the world or the universe works, and I think it's knowing that there are moments where in my life I've known something that I did before, whether it was helping someone or someone else, and I've seen it come in a different way. And I'm
Mm,
very spiritual, so I then say thank you. I recognize when it's coming back, and the value exchange is not the same, and the joy that you feel from even just helping someone with a task, or it was a simple question, or the fact that they even asked you in the first place. I mean,
yeah,
that's already
yeah.
the payback in itself.
Mm,
That someone trusted to be able to be vulnerable and share something with you, and thought you might be able to support them in whatever
totally.
way, shape, or form. But yeah, I've learned that the value exchange is not the same, and it's okay,
Yeah.
and that's good. That's good that way. Circling back, Rachel, so you're back now in France, 360. If I when we not if when we have our chat in a few years' time, where do you see yourself? What's on the cards? What's still to do?
Oh, so much. I think where I see myself is working most of my time on sustainability, because I just get this, very this big feeling of urgency that we really need to get working on changing our, business models for more sustainable or regenerative business models, that we need to, reduce our overall carbon footprint, that we need to change drastically our lifestyles, and that is the most pressing issue of our times, and we're running out of time. So that is the thing that I feel is most meaningful for me to be doing. So in a couple of years, I hope this will be 100% of my time, whether it's working with companies to support them in that transition, whether it's working at a company that's in that process, whether it's working, I don't know, whatever, wherever in the ecosystem. Um, that's what I hope I'll be doing. I think from a practical standpoint, we'll all have to be working for that, for our own survival. And the earlier we get to it, and the more chances we have to limit the the catastrophe. And every day that I'm not doing that, I feel is is getting us closer to the catastrophe. So, and at the same time, I'm extremely optimistic by choice that we can make it happen, because we have, it's the human behavior that put us in that situation, that just tells about the power
Mm,
of collective action. So that's a proof that collective action is very powerful in a negative way, but then it can also be extremely powerful in a positive way. I mean, it's just about the direction that we're bringing it in. And I also realize that I need to be optimistic, and maybe not optimistic, but hopeful. I need to be hopeful, because this is what will get me into action.
mm.
If I'm, if I'm not hopeful and I think all is lost, then just have to wait. And there is no way to change, and there is no action coming out of it. So I also feel like it's a necessity that we must be hopeful in order to have the energy to make it a reality.
And it's a great thing to aspire to, and I think it speaks to your core values and your ethics
Mm.
and things that you believe in. um, has this Is this core values and ethics that you have come about due to your maturity and your growth and your experiences, or is this always something you had as a foundation growing
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
I'm very admiring of the very young people nowadays, like 10 years old, 15, 20 years old,
No,
that
right?
have that have that as a foundation. I
Mm,
don't think I do. Like, to be frank, I think it grew over time.
mhm.
My father was a farmer, very, very. My father and mother are older, and so they were born in the aftermath. Sorry, let's hope
I can hear you. Yeah.
you can hear me.
Yeah,
So they
that's
were born in the aftermath of the Second World War. So a
fine.
moment where it was really difficult times, and actually my father's family were farmers, and so there is this connection with nature. But I grew up in a city. I wasn't, aware or concerned, of those issues. And then I went to China, and I think really the hyper growth of the country at some point, I think I decided to stop eating meat maybe 10 years ago. And that was for environmental reasons. But it was in kind of, getting some information and going on a path of reflection and saying, hey, I can't be part of that. Um, but it didn't, for the longest time, it was just like incubating. And I was just receiving information on the topic. It was just incubating and maturing. And I was, spending most of my energy elsewhere. And, um, and one of the reasons why I came back to France is also because France is much more mature on those topics of environment and carbon footprint than China is, to be very frank. In China, it's not part of conversations. People feel the effect of climate change, but it's not part of the discussion. It's not, there are no, very big actions happening. In France, it's debated. There are laws. There are a lot of companies that are
Coming
really
back to about
implementing
that
things.
circle, isn't it?
Yeah.
We needed to get back to the space
Mm,
where there are like-minded people who are also thinking about
exactly.
that as well. Yeah.
Exactly. You got it exactly right. So you got it exactly right. So that's been my process.
Hmm.
And that's, I wanted to be in the place where things were most mature, because this is where I felt like I could develop, the right skills to make it happen. So yeah, that's, you got it exactly right.
It's amazing. I mean, look, you are at a Faber Novel where it's not only just about technology, but also thinking about, how to make companies better. And you've come full circle in terms of your journey, combining all your experiences. And I think it's an interesting journey you have ahead of you. If we were to give 3 or 4 trailblazer takeaway tips, is what I call them, the trailblazer takeaways, to a young woman out there, just honing in on everything that we've talked about, things that you wish your younger self or your, 20s self, I know you're only 25 now, Rachel,
No, 10 years
would have,
older.
yeah, yeah. What are some takeaways you'd give, some tips?
Yeah, I think it's always, it's a bit challenging to give tips like generic ones, but I think what um, has paid out for me um, were okay, yeah, like surround yourself with people you admire. Um, that has really, really paid out for me. What's paid out for me was I had no idea how hard it would be moving to China, and I had no idea how hard it would be to become an entrepreneur. And I think that's good. If you feel it very deep in you, go for it. And it doesn't matter that you don't know how hard it's gonna be, because a year, 2 years, 3 years later, you'll look back and you'll be like, "Eh, damn, I've walked all that way. That's fantastic." And in the process, I became someone much more resilient and much stronger, and I'm now closer to the ideal that I set for myself. So don't wait until you have the perfect plan and everything set out to do something that you really care about, because it's going to unfold, and every step you take towards that will be progress. So I would say those two things have paid out for me. And in this very, very moment in my life, I need to remind myself of that. So that's very good. We have that conversation today. And yeah, and I think the other one is um, you are your biggest asset. So learn to take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself doesn't necessarily mean protecting yourself. It means repairing yourself. It means nourishing yourself. And if particularly, I think whether you're a man or a woman, we should all be reading Women Who Run with the Wolves because this book is just a fantastic, you know, gives you a lot of strength and tools on how to do that, how to nourish yourself, and um, how to repair yourself. Yeah.
All right. Who wrote that book then? I'll find it out
Doctor,
in the notes.
doctor, let me
Go
find it.
Google.
Yeah, Google. Let me Google that for you. Yes. So it's Clarissa Pincola Estes.
Right. I will put that in the
Yes.
notes. I always love a good book recommendation.
Oh, this one is game changing for me, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel, thank you for this
Thank
reflective
you.
conversation. It's been amazing your experience. I met you at the CBBC function, and you
Yeah.
were a panelist there. You resonated with me because you were sharp, you were engaged, you had experience vivacious, and I said I really needed to speak to this woman and get to know her better and have her share her story on a platform which I hope will inspire some young lady out there to go out and live their life to the fullest, but also live one with purpose, with impact. But it's okay to fall. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay
Mm.
to engage. It's okay to travel and just, hopefully evolve into the next generation of women who we hope to inspire. So thank you so much for your time,
And learn
Rachel.
from. Yeah. Thank you, Ndola. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wonderful. So this has been the Trailblazers Experience podcast. As you know, we're on all streaming platforms. Please remember to follow, share, and if anything, share with another woman, talk about, engage in the conversations, because these women are taking their time to share their stories, but also inspire. Thank you so much.